All right, we should be live. I see the counter going. So thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate you agreeing to spend some time with us this afternoon. I know a lot of people were particularly excited about this one because you're very well known in the fantasy art industry. And it was convenient timing as we got some amazing news the other day that it looks like packing is being finalized and it'll ship at least from China next week. So maybe still about 2 months to go till it lands on our doorsteps, but definitely a lot of excitement to hit that.
Yeah. Oh, I lost your mic. Still no audio.
All right, one moment.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, okay. Got it? Okay. All right.
No, it's been a big week for sure.
Yeah. Good recovery. Okay. Yeah. So as we were talking before we went on air here, there's definitely a mixed bag of people that are interested in sorcery coming from all different walks of life. The game seems to appeal very strongly to kind of midlife folks that grew up in the core golden era of fantasy TCGs, as they say, and as Erik and the company talk about. So, it's kind of where I'm at in life. I grew up with some of the games you contributed to. And so the artwork really resonates, and yours obviously does, since you've kind of been involved in a lot of projects over the years here. So let's assume that it's a mixed audience. People don't know who you are. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into art kind of growing up, if you're classically trained or self-taught, and like what your first commissions were and how it evolved through the years here? And then we'll talk about the advent of sorcery and how Erik approached you for this project.
Sure. That's plenty. So I came originally from central New Jersey and found gaming as a group of friends. They were, we were a lot of kids that didn't fit into a lot of other cliques, and I was definitely a paper and dice gamer from the late 70s. I learned the game that resonated with me the most, that really got me hooked, was a game called The Fantasy Trip, put out by Metagaming, which was Steve Jackson's first foray into game design. It's all recently available again. Really great little system, and has the ability to go into role-playing options. And then from there, I found Dungeons and Dragons and played a lot of that as well for years. It became my it became my social circle. Gaming was.
Okay, interesting.
But in the late 70s and early 80s, I think TSR might have been the only house that had some really substantially good art. Almost everybody else was just a step above amateur. Well, for the most part, there were some companies that were already doing good quality material, but it was much more approachable for a new artist to hit gaming than it was for a new artist to hit publishing. What I really wanted to do was create paperback book covers. I got lost in the paperback books that I read as a teenager, and the transportation that I got out of those, like being able to look at a picture and have an artist bring me into the storyline by showing me a picture like that. That was just magic as far as I was concerned. And but you don't get out of art school and just get a job doing paperback book covers. But it wasn't that tough to get out of art school and get a job doing work in role-playing books. Really? And that's kind of what happened for me. I did go to a 4-year school, went to Parsons School of Design in Manhattan for illustration. And a few months after I got out, I went to my first Gen Con in '83. And
Okay.
a few months after that, I had a painting that I did in school that was a big 2-color spread in the November '83 issue of Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
I got some work doing Middle Earth role-playing products for a company called Iron Crown Enterprises back then.
Okay.
And so fantasy art for years and years became my side hustle before the term was even a thing.
Gotcha.
So
On that point, though, coming out of school, like, how do you, it's a lot different than today's age, you know? Like, I know Erik discovered several of the artists from Sorcery just by going out on DeviantArt and ArtStation and these types of sites. How did you get noticed coming out of school, you know, years ago?
You had to go to the cons.
Okay.
Because the companies were there, and you had to apply yourself
Mm-hmm.
to find the art directors. And if the art directors weren't at the shows, you had to give cards to whoever was behind the cash register and say, you know, could you give this to your art director?
Gotcha.
And sometimes he might have been the art director, or she might
Yeah.
have been the art director, but they didn't always want to engage.
Mm-hmm.
It's you got hounded a lot at conventions in those days.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, that's the difference between a lot of people back then that made it or that didn't, because I knew really good artists who didn't apply themselves and didn't go anywhere. And then I know artists who continually applied themselves, even though their work might not have been great.
Mm-hmm.
And persistence can have a lot of payoff.
Yeah.
So you start mailing out postcards, you go to shows. I mean, there were ways to do it. It is very different now. But yeah, there was ways to communicate before the internet.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of hard work, I guess, showing up to appearances, and it still happens, you know, obviously in today's day and age, but you do have the luxuries of social media and websites and things to get noticed. Although, you know, there's a lot of competition out there, a lot of great artists. So it's interesting.
The competition now is crazy. It's just insane because you can do a piece and in 5 minutes you can show it to half the world.
Right.
Like you could never do that before.
Yeah. Okay. So you did some gaming projects and book covers, I presume, in the earlier days, and then let's get into, I guess, Sorcery. How did Erik reach out and approach you and gauge your interest in this one, and what made you decide to take this on?
Well, if you're aware of the list that you have on your page of the artists, it's listed in the order that they got involved in the project.
Right. Yep.
And I think the second or third individual on that list is Drew Tucker. And I didn't know Drew very well, even though we've both been involved in card games for 30 years. I didn't know him very well for the first 20 some odd years of my career.
Oh, wow.
It was really relatively recently, maybe I'll say 6-7 years ago, that we started meeting at other events, and we became pretty good friends. And now he's one of my best friends in the industry now, and he recommended me to Erik as being good for this project. And when Erik reached out, I was doing a tremendous amount of private commissions, but I'm always interested in getting commercial work again. That's the kind of thing that drives interest in your work in the first place. So it, like any project that doesn't have a successful product behind it, and even though this now resonates as a very strong project, it sure didn't in 2018 when we first started talking about it.
Right. Yeah. Complete unknown.
There's always a little bit of a risk, but Drew was pretty confident that he liked what was going on, and I talked emailed a lot with Erik, and I liked the direction he was going in, and he wanted an old school hand painted look, and that's definitely where my strong point is.
Right.
So like, if it was a company that came to me and said, we only want really polished digital stuff that just has insane amounts of detail, I would have said, well, I'm not your guy then.
Right. Do you work in digital at all, or did you always stick to traditional?
No, I do. I mean, it's
Okay.
a tool that can't be ignored at this point in time, and I use it
Right.
to transport my process, which maybe we'll talk about a little later. But
Cool.
for a good part of my creative career, I was either an art director for a national magazine or a cover designer for a big reprint publisher. And when I did cover designs, I worked in Photoshop and InDesign all day long. And when I got home and after dinner and wanted to work in the studio, I didn't want to do that in a studio.
Yeah.
So I kind of just stuck with traditional medium, and that's kind of been my thing. And now I feel very rooted to it. I don't see a need to change. I'm very happy working traditionally and then delivering digitally.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, and obviously it's very unique. One of the huge selling points of Sorcery being 100% hand painted traditional. So you don't see
And a
that a
lot of
lot
people
in.
really like it.
Yeah, it resonates strongly, and it's kind of interesting. When I've seen a lot of the sample cards, and you look at it online, you get one sense of it. But when you look at the cards and you look closely, you can almost see the texture on the card of like if someone did their work on canvas. I could actually tell a difference,
Right.
and maybe you could with the Magic cards and other games like that, but I didn't
Sometimes.
really notice until I saw like broader scale, almost full art style Sorcery cards, how you can really tell that difference. So, do you work on different mediums? Do you have like a preference that you typically work with?
Well, because Erik was interested in the look of my older work, I grabbed that process as like, okay, so this is what I'll do for this product.
Okay.
I have at times worked in watercolor for card games. I mean, I've probably worked on about 20 different card games in 30 years.
Yeah. Wow.
But and some of them I have done in watercolor, and rarely, like super rarely, I've done an oil painting or two. But I'd
Okay.
say 65-70% of the cards I've done have been acrylic on illustration board or acrylic on masonite.
Okay.
And all the pieces I've done for Sorcery have been acrylic on masonite.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, and I see. Are they? So that's an awesome array of art you have in your backdrop, and we'll get to that in a minute. Start talking about some of the specific cards, but I'm curious, like size wise, they all look fairly comparable in size too. Do you have a pretty standard that you work in? I know years ago, at least like in some of the basic research I did, people worked in very small form, and that might have been because of limitations with printing and things like that. But now in Sorcery, we're seeing all kinds of different sizes and styles coming across. We have Gadu in the chat here who works in massive size, and I've seen others that are like smaller, 8x10-ish and somewhere in between, right? So do you always work in the same size, or did you for Sorcery? Pros and cons of that, I
Changed
guess?
quite a bit. It's changed quite a bit since when I started. Like I said, I've been doing cards for Erik now for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
So even though the product hasn't released yet, I've already gone through a lot of different paths on how I approach my process with pieces for this product. Now, up here is Bone Rabble. That piece was finished in December of 2018.
Wow.
And it is about the smallest one that I've done. And it seemed to me a fine size because that was probably twice as big as most of the cards that I've done in my career.
Yeah.
Most of them are 7x9 or roughly that size.
Okay.
So that seemed like a big one when I started it. But then I started seeing the other cards that people were doing for this product.
Yeah. I've seen Drew did some
So-
big ones too. So if that was your first foray into the game, it looks. He showed me a couple pictures like of his nightmare piece. That looks massive when he showed me the picture. I don't know what it is, and I haven't seen it in person. But yeah, that's funny that you say that. I've seen a vast variety across the different artists.
Right. Well, you see right below it is
Yep.
Buried Treasure,
Mhm.
which is a much more recent piece. I'll pull the blind so the sun's not killing it there.
Yeah, let me enlarge you as well.
Um,
Oh, I didn't want to do that one.
okay, so that is about the size that I do most of my sorcery cards now, and you can see how much bigger it is than Bone Rabble above it.
Yeah. Cool.
I have a 11 by 17 scanner, so I can't really make them any wider than 17 inches. I could if I really wanted to hassle with scanning process, but
Yeah.
17 is wide enough.
Yeah, once you go larger, it becomes a challenge to fit it on a scanner, right? You have to do it in 2 pieces and then digitally merge it to
Right now, the ones I'm doing now. I have to do in 3 because of the
wow.
bow to get it on the scanner. I've got to do the one side and the other side, and then do a middle, so I get a nice clean seam.
Gotcha. Yep.
But yeah, if they were any bigger, I'd have to do 4 corners, and then that would get really crazy.
Yeah, right. And you've done some like landscape style portraits too. I don't know. Had you done that before in other games, or is that something a bit unique to Sorcery, where you're working in wider format?
Horizontal format?
Yeah, the wider landscape style format. Because typically it's portrait style for most games, right? But that's a nuance the way the game is played.
No,
the direction they took things.
I would disagree with you there.
Oh, is that right?
Because generally, like this was another game, but generally the art is just that piece.
Yeah.
It's only recently that the art has become the whole card, and they only worry about what's in that box.
Right.
So most of the time, they were horizontal format. Pieces.
Interesting. Okay. So, like on that point, you're showing me. Yeah. So, like, do you want to start? Let's get into one of your pieces and talk about how you did it, portrait style, and then the landscape. I don't know that you still have. You have the sketch for the aqueduct. If you want to start there,
Sure.
I don't know that you still have the piece that was printed, but I'll leave it to you to tell the story on that one.
Sure. Well, I don't have the painting for aqueduct. That's been sold already, but I do have this sketch of it, and this is kind of an interesting piece. Like, that is what I first submitted to Erik.
Okay.
And he liked the architecture in it.
Yep.
But he needed it to be a little more involved with a town or a village kind of thing.
Okay.
So I had to take that drawing and I added the agricultural element to it.
Wow.
So it wasn't just about the architecture and the water transportation, but about the use of water to gain a product.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I got the card on my other screen, and it says an exceptional sight of earth and water. So I got you. Now you added the guy carrying the buckets of water, right? That was the addition
and
that kind of bring that on.
The crops weren't in the original drawing either.
Right.
But I think what you might be alluding to is that before I did Aqueduct as a horizontal format piece, which is part of Sorcery's land cards.
Yep.
I did it as a regular vertical piece. And that was the first sketch I had that was approved. And not only was it approved, but it was painted. And before they realized that they wanted to make it a vertical format, rather than just blow up a small part of it, they did ask me to redo it. But in testing, it was actually printed.
Amazing. Yep. Yeah, as we were talking earlier, we haven't seen I've seen a couple sample cards of the final version of the Aqueduct, but not the one you have there. That's a special test print that maybe only you and company employees might have. So that's pretty cool.
I've had it for a couple of years already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very nice. Awesome. So getting into, let's pick off some of the, and if people, I don't know if you could see the comments thread here, Jeff, but people are free to
Let's
add
see. I can.
questions or, Jeff brought a number of pieces you see behind him and also a few others. If anybody has any favorites you want to hear the story on a bit, but what's another one that has kind of like, is that a Monster Hunter I see over above your ear there? I know Erik poached the the final, but
that one early on.
That's definitely a favorite.
Yeah, it's a pretty.
Wow. Yep, definitely one of my favorites. That's really cool.
It went through a lot of development, actually. I do have other developmental sketches for it, but that's the only one on a board. I wasn't sure how much I wanted to get into him fighting a monster. I wanted it to be just a focus on the hunter itself, which is why there's such a separation between him and the background. But it allowed me to make it very atmospheric and get into the loneliness that somebody might feel if they had to go into the dark recesses of worlds and find these creatures out, Oh, I lost your audio again, Mike. Not yet. Yes, monster hunting ain't social work. Absolutely.
there we go. Am I back?
Okay, got you back.
All right. Yeah, I got to stop touching my mic. My bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it ain't social work. That's hilarious. Yeah, so all right, so let's take a look at the Ogre Goons right behind you. Is that the one you had? I wanted to talk about your sketch process because it's kind of interesting. When I did a live like this, a discussion with Elvira Shakarova, and she mentioned that her process was she did 3 different sketches, and I'm curious, like, did every artist do that, where you went back and forth with Erik before he settled and chose on the one he liked, or was it kind of case by case depending on if the first submission resonated or not?
It does seem to be a case by case thing. If I get through a drawing and I feel good about it, and that's the only sketch that I'm going to send to Erik, because I don't want him to pick one of the ones I don't like.
That's what I told her. Yeah.
I give him my best effort, but I usually go through a couple of steps before I get to that.
Yeah.
And sometimes there'll be, like in Pilgrim, for example. Let me see a second. I got a big
The Wayfaring Pilgrim, right?
Yes.
There's a guy in France that asks me every few months if I've seen that sample card or the original painting. He desperately wants that one.
He's not alone.
Yeah, really.
That card has a couple of big fans.
Yeah, it's cool.
So when it hits the auction floor, that's going to be a neat one.
Yeah.
So this is the original sketch, and you can see that the figure is a little bit different than how he sits now, and that's because I did a sketch in my sketchbook and really liked it. So, but of just the figure, not the background at all. Painting's kind of small. It was an early one. But there it is.
Yeah. Different posture. Right.
Yes. Right.
Yep.
And I submitted this sketch, or maybe I did this sketch and was happy with the compositional arrangement, but not with the figure on the sketch. And I just went right back into my sketchbook and grabbed it out of that and transposed it into the drawing instead. So let's see. You asked about Ogre Goons. Hold on.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got a couple of sketches here for Ogre Goons.
Yeah, cool.
And the first one is that single figure that's furthest from me, because it was originally called Rage Ogres, but I had written it down. I'd written it in my notes as Rage Ogre, and just did a single solitary figure.
Gotcha.
And Eric said, "No, we really need more than one in there." So I had to go back in and try and draw a few more ogres from different positions. Like, this is one that pretty much made it into the final painting, as opposed to this guy. It was a little different.
Yeah, charging a bit.
But, you know, sometimes I go through a couple of different stages trying to work them out. And the reason I had to redraw it, well, I could have just, was because I had to move the figure over to make room for additional characters.
Right.
So I wound up almost doing 2 complete sketches.
Very cool.
And then there's the final for that piece is right there.
Yeah, I love that one. That's have you seen the final? I'm sure you've looked at the final version of this one, but this one is really hilarious how he finished this one off. It says ordinary ogres blunder about. Actually, that changed again. It says ordinary ogres blunder about. So they're kind of goofy and aloof. And then he actually changed the flavor text as well. It says grok grok, me find rock, what rock do, it sit there. So they sound like goons, right? It used to be they had like an effect where they had to attack. That was like the play mechanic. So it's kind of funny. They were just kind of these goon bullies that couldn't help but attack other minions. But yeah, that's a flavorful one, and the expression on their face and their posture, that's another great storytelling piece. Love that.
Well, I think Eric helped me out with that a bit, because when I sent in a piece originally, it was still called Rage Ogres, and I had some reservations. I wasn't happy about the final presentation of how these characters looked. I thought they looked kind of goofy. And I said as much to Eric. I even thought about redoing it for a while. And when it came around that things had to go to press and we didn't have time for me to rework it, we just said, well, it's okay. It'll be fine. But he changed the card to Ogre Goons, which seems to fit the image a little bit better. And I was happier with that. So
yeah, to play into the goofiness.
Kudos to him for helping me out.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's an important aspect of the game. You know, it's supposed to be experiential and flavorful. So cards like that are important and really resonate strongly with players, I think. So that's a fun one. All right, so we're gonna do a reveal later. I want to hold off on that one and talk about a few more of your pieces. So what else do you have readily available there? I think we talked about most of the ones on the board. Or I guess the is that on the left, the healers card? What was the final name of that?
And when you wanted to talk about process, this one is really well illustrated as far as how my process works, because everything starts in a little sketchbook. Okay, that's where all my ideas begin. And most of the drawings in here, now I think this sketchbook is newer than this piece. Like I said, the earliest ones I've done quite a while ago. But most of my sketches are like this kind of size. They're less than the size of a playing card. And I'm just working out figure placement and composition in a rectangle. That's really all I'm doing in here. But then I get a sketch that I'm content with for the project.
Wow.
And I will blow up that card size sketch to the size I want to work, which is normally 8.5 by 11. And then I'll blow that up so this is what I'm looking at on a board. And I put a piece of tracing paper over that and start to fill in all the details.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
And then when those details are filled out, this is what I send to Eric for approval. And if he gives me a green light on it, and sometimes he'll say, oh, you needed to add more than one ogre, or he'll say, you know, that I really need a farmer in that field instead of just the water. But in this case, he just said, yeah, that looks fine. Go ahead with that. And then I'll transfer that to a board, and that becomes my painting.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I like how you functionally use the full space there. I mean, it's been kind of a mixed bag where some artists will just have some kind of dead space there, so it can look a little odd when you see the full painting, or they'll hide things under, where they know the text box will go. But that table, you don't need it per se. But I think when you see the full art there, it looks well balanced and really, really nice.
Well, I hope at some point, if that winds up in somebody's house, it'll look better because of the work I did on the bottom.
Definitely.
And Erik told me later, like in the case of Sunken Treasure, I had all this coral on the bottom and a crab and a bunch of stuff that just was going to get buried under that box.
Yeah.
And do I have that sketch around? And he said, well, we are talking about doing full art cards. And if we do that, all of that stuff will be visible. Yeah, here it is. This is the sketch for it.
Oh, so cool.
All that stuff in the bottom gets lost under the box, but they're nice little details. And the guy who owns that piece was really appreciative of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's interesting that you actually sketched out the box and the proportioned text boxes too. I thought maybe some artists did that digitally somehow and kind of iterated like that, but yeah, it makes sense.
I sketch it out because really I'm composing in that space between the two boxes.
Right.
That's where my composition is important. What comes on the top and on the bottom of them is nice, but I know it's for most of those cards, it's just going to be buried under the text.
Yep.
So I'm composing in a square shape with a little extension both above and below.
Right. Yeah, it becomes secondary, but it's interesting that the foils will have that full art on the back. They're going to be pretty rare though, so whoever owns those will be lucky to acquire some of those. They'll be hit or miss. So that brings up another question. Like, how do you strike the right balance between detail versus? I mean, sometimes you can get away with having a simple composition, I feel, and it'll work well in a game. Or you could go nuts and include a lot of detail, but then perhaps if you're working in a larger size, when it gets compressed, you lose some of that anyway. Do you have a process for striking that balance, or you just go off of feel?
Well, those are all good observations as far as you can create a tremendous amount of detail, but you do have to realize that the image is only printing a little larger than a matchbook. It's
right.
So, I mean, when I started in this industry, we were advised to make things simple and graphic so that you could show a card from across the room and recognize it. That's why a lot of my early stuff is as simple as it is. It was never about doing 18 by 24 inch or now even larger pieces.
Yeah.
And putting in a full week's work in them, largely because you want to be seen as having the most outstanding pieces in the card game.
Right.
But you saved that kind of effort for book covers and for role-playing covers because they printed bigger, or vinyl records. But
makes sense.
There's a lot of appreciation for the detail, no matter how small it prints. And I constantly hear when people see a painting at a show, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I never saw that before," because in the cards it gets so buried. But
right.
So it's a nice bit of discovery for somebody, and it's easier as I get older to paint larger and not to have to go in so super tight.
Sure.
So I'm happy with painting bigger, and the recent pieces I've done are definitely among the largest that I've done for the game. And as you alluded to, we'll see one shortly. So
cool. Yeah, it's interesting how you say that about discovery. I've actually found that it cuts both ways, where I've seen the image on the computer, or like even the full art images that you and other artists have posted on your social media and things like that. But then once I saw like a sample card in hand, I actually discovered stuff that I hadn't noticed before, because you're looking closer. It's right in front of your face. You could touch and feel it. So I think that'll be cool. There'll be a lot of discovery when people have the cards in hand, and if they're fortunate enough to get those full art pieces, that'll be something special for sure.
Yeah.
So let's see. Are there any others on the, I think we covered the board. Did you have any others tucked away there that you wanted to,
I do.
you could show us?
I do have a couple. There's the Watchtower original. Let's see. The angles are weird because I have to
I
do
know.
everything back.
It's inverted. Let me see if I can blow you up full screen. I got to play with the settings, and
Okay.
it keeps wanting to show my. I had to help me remove the desktop. We're not going to need that, I don't think. Yeah, that would have done it. 1 second. There we go. Okay, now we'll be able to see your art a little better. Beautiful.
Okay.
That's perfect.
So that is Watchtower.
Very nice. So was this one that you had done vertically at first, or was this done later when you knew you were working in landscape?
No, the only card I did vertically first that had to change was Aqueduct.
Oh, okay.
So this came a little bit later in the assignments. Let me see if I have a date on it. Yeah, this one's from early 2020. Okay. So I'd already been painting other pieces for the game for over a year before I got that assignment.
Yeah, isn't it funny? We're talking about 2020 and that wasn't even early, right? When did you start? 2017, 2018, something like that?
I first corresponded with Erik in mid to late 2018, like August of 2018, I think.
Do you recall what some of
this summer we'll know each other 5 years this summer?
Yeah,
you know that we've been in touch. Hold on, I'll grab another.
Okay.
This is Swivin Scout.
Swivin Scout, yeah, saw that one in person. Yep.
Right.
At the art show.
And this background is based on a photo that I took in Denver at not Denver specifically, but out in Colorado at the Rocky Mountain National Park.
Very cool. Do you tend to draw a lot of inspiration for your work from real life experiences and photos like that, or is it kind of mixed?
It always depends on the assignment. Because there are some pieces, like there are pieces that I can't show you yet. That
yeah. Well, we're happy to hear you're still working for future sets.
So am I.
Yeah, that's great.
There's one I did very recently that when I got the title, I thought, oh, I've got perfect reference for this from something I did years and years ago, and it fit the bill to a T. So that piece is based a lot on reference that I had in my files, but some pieces, like all the ones behind me that I'm looking at now, the Miracle Workers, the Ogre Goons, Buried Treasure, and Bone Rabble. Those are all fabricated backgrounds that are just out of my sketches and made up. The Buried Treasure, the one that's over here.
Yep.
I did do a pretty elaborate setup with that because I wanted to up my game a bit. So I used a wooden beer case from the 30s for the chest, and I had a bunch of coins from a game that I worked on, and I went to a local thrift store and bought that vase and a bunch of costume jewelry and the pitcher, and set it all up in my basement and lit it and shot it and drew from that. And so the core of that piece is definitely based on some photography to get the lighting right and to just make everything feel more tangible.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, that came out great. Someone's asking here in the chat, who was the model for the Tragedy Worry Ward card? That's an interesting one because is there a story there?
Yeah, it was a friend and a neighbor of mine. I lived when I did this piece, and I don't have that painting's been sold as well, but here's the sketch.
Wow, very nice. Yeah.
And so this was a guy that lived 2 houses down from me in my last place of residence on Long Island. And I knew this was going to be a figurative piece, like not one that was strong in background, but was more about this individual, because the card is about the person. It's not about the situation or about something that he's doing. So I had to have a solid figure, and rather than base it on an art mannequin or something like that, I had a guy 2 doors down that knew my work from other games. So he always had kind of a bit of an appreciation for what I was doing.
Cool.
His name is Erik. And I said, I got just a thing for you to help me out with. So he came over one day and threw on a cloak and crouched down on my back deck. And I took a bunch of pictures of him. And so, yeah, that came out of that whole thing.
Wow, that's awesome. I bet he's pumped to see his card in a printed game.
His name is Adam. And
okay.
I know that when the card comes out and I've got a few extras, I'll definitely send him one, because I don't know how closely he's followed the development of this game or knows much about it.
Yeah. That's really special to be in a card for a game that's published, and it looks like we all think Sorcery is going to be a huge success, obviously. So we're pretty pumped up. And someone was just asking in the chat here how you're feeling after all these years, 4 or 5 years of sketching and painting. We're finally close to the finish line. Are you pretty pumped up?
I can't wait. I can't wait.
I bet.
I'm so pumped for this to hit the markets and see what kind of feedback it gets from the public. But I did want to entertain one question. Somebody asked about a work in progress on Mordric Druids, which is probably my favorite piece of the first 19. And so this was my sketchbook piece.
Oh, wow.
You can see how crazy rough that is. I mean, it's just so, but blown up to the size that I work on, and then throw a piece of tracing paper over that, and you get that.
Very nice. Yeah. And the sky, obviously you can't see it in a sketch, but the coloring you did on the sky of that really adds a lot of character to it. It looks beautiful. Yeah,
I wanted to go a little outside my comfort zone and chose that warm color sky instead of the usual cools that I work with. So that one's for you, Simon.
Yeah, that one's amazing. Love that one. What was I going to ask you? So let's see. Yeah, I think we hit the chat. So we got about another 15 or 20 minutes or so. Do you want to do the special reveal? I bet a lot of people have been hanging out to kind of see what's coming for Arthurian Legends. So
yeah, we can try that. We can go there. Sure.
You want to tell us what the yeah, go ahead. Whatever you want to say about it before you show it. Do you want to say anything, or do you want to show it first and talk about the idea?
So whenever you get involved in a game, it's kind of like, I guess, being an actor on a TV series. You always want to hope that there's going to be more of it, that it's going to be part of your workload for a duration. So to see the attention and the dedication that Erik has given to this product, and to watch it develop, has been just a wonderful sign to what is to come. To see the fan base, largely thanks to you, sir,
thank you.
develop as well, and all for something that hasn't hit the streets yet. I'm excited about this product like I haven't been about one in a long while. So when they came up with Arthurian Legends, you couldn't have hit my heartstrings more. To do historical work like that, to do stuff that has one foot in real history, is exactly the kind of work I want to be doing. So I was totally stoked about it. I'm really excited about some of the pieces I've done for it. And if you weren't aware and you're watching this, I checked in with Erik before a couple of days ago and said, is there any chance you'd let us reveal one of the images for the next expansion? on this interview, and Erik said, absolutely, you can pick one. So I wrangled with it a little bit. I've thought about which ones would be significant to the storytelling in this arc. But because there are cards that are functional, but not so necessarily Arthurian.
Okay.
But then there are ones that are really Arthurian, like some of the knights and the locations and stuff like that. And this is a location card. It's historical. It's a real place you can visit today, and I'll grab the piece.
Can't wait to see. That was a hell of a build-up. I'm excited.
Frogman.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard people love those frogs.
Yeah, I was
very cool.
Now, see, that's one that I was going to prep to sell, and my wife was like, "No, we got to keep that one." So
yeah, there's a lot of frog theme in this alpha set. I don't know what it is with Erik and frogs. It's interesting.
So the frogs are hanging out in my guest room.
Frogs and other reptiles. That's cool.
Okay, so like I said, the new ones are bigger.
Okay.
Because it's more comfortable for me to paint bigger now. I'm sorry to say, but that's just part of getting older. Yeah. And it allows me to create a more dynamic feel in the painting. So
here we go, guys.
This is Stonehenge.
Amazing. Wow, another Stonehenge. So there's a Stonehenge in alpha. And now
it's not called Stonehenge in alpha anymore.
Right. He changed it.
It's called Standing Stones.
I'm looking for it.
Yeah, this is the specific location of Stonehenge. So what I did have to do was that I had to go in and find real site locations of it and rebuild it. I had to add to the structure to make it look like it might have looked when it was more functional and intact. So you talked before about simplicity versus over involvement in details. And this is a pretty simple approach to doing it, but I thought it should be about the light and the strength of it, and not necessarily about crazy little details. The scale is provided by the figures here. And I picked a frame for it that had that same oversized, earthy appearance.
It looks great. Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. You know, when you see Stonehenge, you often get like a very zoomed out view. I feel like if you Google it on the internet, or like a sky type angle, but you have like a ground type vantage point. And it's actually pretty different than some of your other. I guess it's funny. You got a card called Vantage Hills, but it's a little. I noticed that theme in some of your other cards. I got it on the other screen here on my website, but I like the design choice on that. That's really cool with the shadowing and the figures there to give perspective. Beautiful. Yeah, it seems like people are pretty fired up in the comments here, excited about this one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Thanks everybody for those kind words. The light was important that's coming through here. I like the way the color played out in that. I like adding birds to my skies a lot because it adds a little element of life. So a lot of my, if you see an open sky, there's usually a bird or two in it.
Okay. Yeah. I see that as I'm looking at some of your cards here on the other screen. That's interesting. It's hard to tell that with the resolution. I don't think this comes across in 1080p, but is it off to the right of the frame?
There's two birds.
I can kind of make it out a little bit. Yep. Very cool.
I'll bring it a little closer.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, again,
so you can
beautiful
see
sky.
The color a little better.
Yep. Yeah. Now I see the birds, and the color's coming across, and the
well,
shadow.
You kind of get this,
the
sense of strength and the sense of the the size of the structure. That's what I wanted to come across.
Yeah, that's great. Very cool.
So
Yeah.
this one was done pretty recently, and I'm doing more now. So I'm so psyched to
Awesome.
be part of this project, and I just can't wait to see where it goes.
Yep. Yeah, we're almost there. It's really exciting, and I'm kind of with you on the thematics of it. It seems like Alpha is planting a lot of seeds for expansion. And then if you look at some of the, I've something that I've kind of gotten a thrill from and diving into the cards and talking with the artists about their ideas, but even just seeing the titles, there's several cards that have real life history, which sends you on a whole tailspin of like Googling and watching YouTube videos and documentaries and reading books. And actually, on that point, it sounds like you're pretty well read. You're into books. You mentioned that earlier in your upbringing and the Arthurian lore realm. If people want to brush up on Arthurian lore, I'm curious, do you have any book recommendations or resources on where we can draw inspiration and get smart on that before we see the artwork? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you want
to. Yeah, no, it's an interesting topic to talk about. There's a turn of the last century illustrator by the name of Howard Pyle. He's known as the father of American illustration. And he was active from about 1890 to 1911. A little bit before then, but that's generally when he made his splash. And he taught a lot of illustrators who work today, and he wrote a lot of he rewrote a lot of stories and did illustrations for them. So he became this kind of like he gave himself work, sort of. And Pyle wrote about 5 different volumes of Arthurian tales, and you can still easily find those stories today. But if you want to get a little well versed on who your knights are and who was responsible for finding the Grail and who did this and that and the other thing, Pyle's works are a good place to start. And and years ago I put together a book of illustrations from classic published material of King Arthurian subjects. It was called oh geez, it has Camelot in the title. It's probably been 15 years now. And I did tons of books like that where I would go into public domain material done from 1900 to 1925 and pull out great classic images from illustrators and make books of them. And I had a publisher that I was working with that would take these projects out of my hands and run with them and make them available again so that other people could find them. And I did one that was all King Arthur stuff. So it has some of Howard Pyle's work. It has N.C. Wyeth's work. Wyeth was one of Pyle's students, and a tremendous amount of British illustration in it as well, obviously. So
fascinating, very cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the reveal. We're getting close to an hour, so I know you're bracing for a snowstorm up north there. So I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to ask you, make sure I asked you before we closed, where can we see you this year? Do you plan on going to some events?
Yeah. If you haven't seen me in the last few months, it's because I live in the northern part of the country, and I'm just outside of a major ski resort. We get a lot of snow here. So I don't travel in the winter months anymore. But April starts the beginning of my touring season. And I'll probably hit a show every 3 weeks or so for the next 6 months. So
awesome.
I'm starting in early April with a show in Europe. I'm hoping to get to a MagicCon or two. But I am going to be at Gen Con this year for the first time in 5 years.
Oh, really?
So I did Gen Con for 20 years straight, from the late 80s to the mid-aughts. Basically from 87 to 07. I did it almost straight through. But I haven't been doing it regularly since then. It's periodic. And then, of course,
Okay.
there was the pandemic.
Yep.
But I will definitely be there this summer for the first time in 5 years. So I can't wait to see the reaction of Sorcery fans there.
Yeah.
And I'll have some of these paintings with me, hopefully, and the sketches as well. I have no plans to retain the sketches. I might pick one to save in my files, but most of them will be available.
Okay.
As is with this group of paintings, other than that watchtower, which my son has claimed, all of these will be available.
Okay.
The other, and I'll also be at a LuxCon again this year. LuxCon is a big art-based show in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I love what they do with that event. I'll be back there again. And
Great.
there will be other events that fill in. Like I see Flights 2 Game Store is a good friend of mine, a local guy, Dave Sheedy. I know you've talked to Dave quite a bit.
Yeah.
In
New York, right? Is that where it's at?
He is in New York, and not far from me.
And
I will, when the game comes out and he's ready to have me there, I'll definitely be doing something at his store. So
awesome.
I'm not so big or so full of myself that I can't do a store appearance once in a while if the situation's right. And I'm looking forward to traveling and getting back on the road and meeting the people who play the games again.
Yep. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of peer pressure to go to Gen Con. It's it's difficult with 3 little kids to travel too much, but I'm gonna see.
That's something you have to work out.
Yeah. If I can make that one happen, then yeah, LuxCon's a good opportunity. I think there were 5 artists there last year that contributed to Sorcery, and as far as I know, I think at least 4 of the 5, or 3 or 4 of the 5 or 6, confirmed they'll be there again this year. So just wanted to put that out there for the audience that opportunity. I was hoping last time there'd be some Sorcery something or other that I could acquire from you guys. And I know you had some paintings there, but I think this year maybe we'll have more, I don't know, prints and, cards to get signed or artist proof cards, all kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah, I will. Well, we are supposed to get proofs. I'm looking forward to that. I will have prints available of almost any image, digital prints. And if the crowd warrants it, and if the demand is there, I will do. I'll pick the ones that I feel strongest about, whether they be cards that the game is really centered around, stronger cards, or paintings that I constantly get requests for, and I might do a better print run of those kind of materials.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. And I know at Gen Con, Sorcery recently announced they're gonna have like a little side tournament there. They're not gonna have a booth, but they'll definitely be Sorcery fans there. And they've been talking about it in the Discord, so you'll definitely meet it. That'll be our first taste of actual Sorcery fans going to a event with some of the company employees and seeing what the buzz is like. And I think once Alpha's on the streets, I think we're in for a frenzy. That'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll definitely have some original material that I'll be saving to bring to Gen Con with me.
Beautiful. Sounds great. All right. So we've gone an hour. I said I won't keep you longer than that. Do you have any closing comments or anything we left out that maybe you wanted to share before we wrap up?
It's been a real great ride so far working on this project, and I just like to thank Erik for picking me up and involving me. I know that he wanted a certain feel from the early era of the games, and I definitely still resonate a lot of the same way that I work. I went back to that same mode of working as I did back then.
Yeah.
And it's been but I'd like to think that a piece like this that's probably 6 times the size of the cards I started out doing 30 years ago has a lot more of a statement and will look a lot nicer on somebody's wall.
Oh yeah. The reaction here in the group was strong. That's definitely going to be a favorite. So Yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next for sure.
And it should be an important place in the game. You know, it should have strength and power. And
yeah,
so, yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay. Well, thanks,
Mike.
Jeff. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you asking me. And anytime that I can help you out with something, don't be a stranger.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate it. Thanks for everybody that tuned in. And this will be posted out in the Facebook group and YouTube for those that missed it. So thanks again, Jeff. Appreciate it. Hope to see you at some of these events coming up. Take care, everybody.
I hope so. You too. Bye.
See ya.